What's up, guys? Let's talk about chapter 4. Okay, chapter 4 is test. It's actually 4 and 5, right? So you're going to see when you log into Edulastic on Friday, you're going to see it's going to say Serve Safe chapters 4 and 5 test or something like that. But anyway, it depends on what edition of the book you're looking for, whether it's chapter 4 or chapter 5. Anywho, so let's talk about it. The test, you'll notice, and I kind of have been telling you that from here on out with food nutrition or Serve Safe is kicked up a notch, right? You got to know your stuff. You especially have to know your stuff for your certification test. Okay, I understand you're at home and I'm not watching you take the test if you follow my drift and that kind of stuff. But for the certification, you need to know your stuff. Okay, so let's talk about 4 and 5. Okay, so I really would be paying attention right now if you follow my drift, right? You need to know your receiving temperatures, okay? It may ask you what is the acceptable receiving temperature of milk, what's the acceptable receiving temperature of eggs, and that sort of thing. So remember in your interactive notebook you did receiving temperatures, like when you're receiving a food shipment delivery, know your receiving temps, okay? Remember milk and eggs is 45, but you got how many hours to cool it to 41? 4, right? So then know your receiving temperatures. Know your food storage order. So in today's video, today is Wednesday, depending on when you're watching this, yesterday's video, we went over food storage. Like if you have a cooler and you don't have multiple coolers and you have to put all different types of food in one cooler, there's different orders on the shelf that you put them in. Know, for example, where do you put chicken or poultry? At the bottom, that's the bottom shelf. Where do you put ready to eat food? On the top shelf, and so on down the line. You got ready to eat seafood, whole cuts of ground beef and pork, then you got ground meat, and you have poultry. Know that order, okay? It's going to ask you several times for that order, okay? And sometimes you may be given food examples, or different examples of food, but you got to put them in order, okay? Know what FIFO is, or first in, first out. That's food with the expiration date that's going to expire first, you put it in the front, and food with later expiration dates you put behind it. You should know by now if you're cutting up raw chicken and then you're moving on to lettuce, what do you got to do to the cutting board, right? Wash, rinse, sanitize it. What else we got? If you have ice crystals on your food, what is that a sign of? That's a sign of time temperature abuse, okay? So ice crystals on food, if you're getting a shipment in of fish or frozen food, mozzarella sticks, I don't know, anything, right? And it's got ice crystals all over it, that's a sign that it was defrosted and then frozen again. And that's time temperature abuse and you don't want it, okay? So just remember that. What else we got? If you are preparing TCS food on site, so I work at Ballestra's and I'm preparing chicken salad sandwiches that I'm gonna go put on the shelf in the front of Ballestra's, what do I have to have on that container? I have to have a sell by or a use by date, okay? Just make sure you know that. Know your thermometers. When are you gonna use an infrared thermometer? Right here. When am I gonna use this thermometer? Can I use it to check the internal temperature of food? No, I can only use it to check the surface of a grill or the surface of something, okay? That sort of thing. Now, that would be when I would use an infrared thermometer. What else we got? If I'm receiving a shipment of coleslaw, or I'm receiving a shipment of clam chowder, or soup, or, you know, think on that lines. If I'm receiving that, how am I going to check the temperature of it? Remember I showed you my Panera bread soup in the video. I got to open it up, put my thermometer in there, and usually an immersion probe, because you're immersing it in like coleslaw soup or something like that, and get a temp, okay? 41 or below. Remember, if it's cold food, cold TCS food, it's got to be 41 or below. Otherwise, you don't want it. You got to send it back. Bye, I don't want that. If it's above 41, okay? Again, know what FIFO is, first in, first out. We didn't really talk about ice scoops or ice in general, and it's kind of like a random question. But when you're dealing with ice, if you're working in a restaurant and you're gonna go put ice in a customer's drink and then, you know, refill their sweet tea or something, how do you handle the ice? You cannot scoop it with a glass. You're not going to use your hands, right? There's an ice scoop, and they ask you that several times on the certification test. It's easy, you know, when they get right. How do you handle ice with a scoop? With the ice scoop, okay? No hands, no glass. You cannot handle a glass. They say the reason behind that is if it's made of glass, obviously, and it could chip off into the ice, and then you get, you know, a contaminant in your ice and that sort of thing. So only a scoop. Remember 4 and 6. Okay, why do you need to know the numbers 4 and 6? 4 inches, 6 inches. As far as equipment being off your floor in your kitchen, remember I showed you in the cafeteria, all the countertops, all the ovens and like racks and all that kind of stuff, 6 inches off the floor so they can clean underneath it. As far as stuff that's on the countertop, there was a big slicer in the kitchen that was on the countertop. It has to be 4 inches off of the countertop. That way they can clean underneath it. Start noticing that stuff. You'll start noticing, and now with COVID it's a little different. I don't know how y'all are about going out to eat and that kind of stuff. Before COVID, the kids would go out to eat at like Five Guys or Fujihana or wherever over the weekend especially, and they will come in on Monday and be like, oh, you never guess what I saw over the weekend. I went to eat at Five Guys, and you know what I noticed? I noticed all their stuff was up off the floor. So stuff like that. Start noticing things when you go in restaurants. You may be able to pick out some stuff, okay? But no 4 inches and 6 inches. If you're going to pick a supplier, an approved supplier, this is the person that you're going to be purchasing your food from. What's really important with them? Obviously, you need to know if they're a reputable supplier. How are you going to know if they're reputable or not? If they get inspection reports and they abide by local, state, and federal laws. All right. Know about your shell stock tags. We talked about that. If you've got seafood, oysters, that kind of stuff, and you're getting them delivered, like when Salvo's gets a big delivery of oysters to his restaurant, they have to have a shell stock tag on them. How long do you have to keep that shell stock tag? 90 days. Why? So if somebody gets sick after eating that particular batch of oysters, they know where they came from, where they were harvested from, the date they were harvested, and all that kind of stuff, okay? Chemicals, y'all know, store chemicals away from food. Again, know your receiving temperatures. If you're receiving a bunch of ground meat or ground chicken or ground turkey or a bunch of chicken breasts and that kind of stuff, fish, that's all 41 degrees or below to receive it. If you're getting a bunch of fish delivered, how are you going to check the temperature on them to make sure that it's 41 or below? Are you just going to touch it? Let me just touch it and get a temp? No, you're going to get a thermometer and you're going to insert it in the thickest part of the fish. Okay, so just kind of keep that in mind. Get your thermometer. You would get one like this. All right. This is your just your regular digital thermometer with the penetration probe on it. You got your fish. You stick it in the thickest part of your fish, and that's going to give you your temp. If it's above 41, you don't want it. Bye, Felicia. See you later. I don't want that fish. You better be getting me some fresh fish in here because I don't want that. Right? What else we got? What else? I was just seeing something. Anyway, moving on. If you're checking the temperature of food, it's got to be your thermometer's got to be plus or minus 2. So you can have it leaves you room for a margin of error or that sort of thing. So if, it can be plus or minus 2. So if it's 41 plus or minus 2, you're good to go. Other than that, then you buy Felicia, send it back. Same thing if you can check in the temperature of air like in your cooler and stuff like that is plus or minus 4. So it leaves a room for a little margin of error with the thermometer. So just remember that. Food is plus or minus 2. Record time and temperature during delivery. We talked about that. I don't have any of those. I did put the picture up though. It's a little tag. So if you're trying to record temperature or if the question asks you what type of thermometer keeps track of your temperature of your food during delivery, that's a time temperature indicator. That's those little tags they will put on them from the warehouse, say. And if any time during delivery, anytime it's on that delivery truck while it's going along and getting to you, it goes into the time temperature danger zone, it'll get into the red zone and it'll keep track of that on that little tag. And then when it gets to you, you can look at the tag and say, no, this is on red. That means some point during your delivery of this soup to me, it got in the time temperature danger zone and it's in red. I don't want it. So that's a time temperature indicator. What else are we talking about? 7 days. Remember, you can only keep stuff for 7 days, even if it's kept in the cooler. You make that chicken salad sandwiches, and you put them in the cooler. You can only keep them for 7 days, and you gotta throw them away. We didn't talk about glass thermometers, and I'll put a picture up on there, but a glass thermometer they make a lot of times when they're cooking candy. I know my mom as a kid, and she still uses it to this day. If she ever makes fudge during Christmas time, she makes a lot of candy and candy fudge and stuff during the holidays. She takes that glass thermometer and it gets you the temperature of the fudge. The biggest thing with glass thermometers is obviously they're glass. Make sure you're using shatterproof glass. You don't want glass that isn't shatterproof. You stick it in there, it blows up in the pot, and then you got glass all in your fudge or whatever it is you're making, and you got a physical contaminant. So that's the biggest thing with glass thermometers is make sure it's got shatterproof glass. If it doesn't have shatterproof glass, then you don't need to be using that. okay? Why do you take the temperatures of food in 2 different spots? Basically because it can be, temperatures vary in food. So you want to take the temperature of food in 2 different spots because the temperature can vary from the thickest part to the thinnest part of the meat and all that kind of stuff. So to make sure that it's accurate. You need to calibrate your thermometers. Yes, you should calibrate your thermometers regularly. That makes, especially if you drop a thermometer or, about once a day, make sure you calibrate it to make sure they're working right. Make sure you know your 7 days, and if you're making stuff that's it's going to expire before the 7 days, then you throw it away when it expires. If the food is recalled, you gotta separate. If the food item you have in your restaurant is part of a recall, you gotta separate it and tag it. Say, hey, this food, tag it. Food part of a recall, do not use. Don't throw away the food in case somebody wants to come back and look at it. Like if it's Kraft macaroni and cheese and you got it in your restaurant and it's part of a recall, separate it, tag it, put it as do not use, and then don't throw it away in case Kraft wants to come, pull that mac and cheese and check it out. You don't know when to reject food. Obviously, if food looks nasty, it smells, it doesn't bounce back when you touch it, it stays indented, it's, slimy, it's bulging and it looks gross, it looks like it's got, chewed up stuff, it's open, maybe a rodent got into it, a rat, mouse got into it. You don't want all that stuff. Reject it, send it back. If it's cans that are dented, send it back. Anything that's not labeled properly or not labeled at all, send it back. So you don't know that. What else we got? You can't defrost food at room temperature, which we talked about that in the other video. Like if I'm trying to defrost some meat, I'm taking meat out for hamburgers tonight, and it's frozen out the freezer, I can't just put it on the counter and let it defrost all day at room temperature. It's time temperature abuse. You're supposed to put it in the refrigerator and let it defrost in the refrigerator. If I'm transporting food off-site, so if I make a bunch of enchiladas at my restaurant and I'm bringing them to a catering event, how do I need to let the people know at the catering event when these enchiladas need to be thrown away? You have to put that on the label. You don't, call them up and say, hey, I'm sending some enchiladas over and they need to be thrown away at this time. Or email them or text them or anything like that. You need to put a label physically on the enchiladas themselves saying when to throw them away. Other than that, I believe that is about it. And you should be good to go. Just remember, watch this video. This test is kicked up a notch, and it's going to be that way from here on out. This is stuff you need to know for your certification. We're still on schedule to take the certification sometime before the end of the semester. I can tell you we usually take it, exams usually fall, right before Christmas, and we usually take them about a week before exams. A week or 2 before exams, we'll go ahead and take the certification exam. It'll be in here, as far as I know, unless something changes. It'll be here in the classroom or in a computer lab using the computers. So all this stuff is what you're going to have to know for your certification exam. So don't mess around. Don't oh, look at it later, that kind of thing. You're going to have to know it anyway at the end of the road. So just make sure you're looking at this stuff and you're studying it and you do well on your test, okay? If you have any questions for your test on Friday, let me know. And I cannot wait to see you guys soon. Have a great rest of your afternoon.